In September 1938, I was passing through San Sebastian on my way back to France. Someone chosen by God to be a patron of musicians, but who still had to decide to become one, brought Regino Sainz de la Maza and myself together for lunch. We ate well, the wine wasn't bad either, and the moment was ideal for fantasies and daring ideas. This was also a time full of illusions in which we Spaniards believed that anything was feasible. Well, suddenly, Regino, in that voluble and determined way of his, said, "My friend, you must come back with a concerto for guitar and orchestra." And to soften me up, he added in pathetic tones, "It's been my lifelong dream." To ingratiate himself further with me, he went on, "You are the one destined to do this, like a chosen one." I immediately drank down 2 glasses of the best Rioja and exclaimed with the greatest conviction in the world, "My friend, it's done." I remember the scene very well, because that evening remained a happy memory throughout my life, and a moment of calm in those times which were so turbulent for Spain and so threatening for Europe. I remember, too, I don't know why, everything to do with the Concierto de Aranjuez remains in my memory, that one morning, 2 months later, standing in my little studio in the Rue Saint-Jacques in Paris, in the heart of the Latin Quarter, thinking vaguely about the concerto, since I'd become attached to the idea in spite of considering it difficult, I heard within me the entire theme of the Adagio, suddenly, without a pause, almost as you're about to hear it. And suddenly, with hardly a transition, the theme of the 3rd movement, exactly as it appears in the work. I quickly realized that the work was done. Our intuition doesn't deceive us in this. I sketched the outlines suggested by the respective themes and wrote the guitar part, together with a first very rudimentary and uncertain sketch of the orchestral part. Today, when I hear the orchestration of this work, I can't understand why I had so many doubts and was so dilatory in writing out the different levels of the accompaniment. This contrasted even more with the ease with which I composed the work, and above all, with the speed of its conception. If something akin to inspiration, that irresistible and supernatural force, brought me to the Adagio and the final Allegro, I came to the first movement through reflection, calculation, and willpower. It was the last movement of the 3 to be composed, and so I finished the work where I should have begun it. And for this reason I didn't have a clear picture of the whole, except when I'd written the first movement. The work was finished in a few months, and the orchestration, a tapestry which, woven around the most elusive of instruments, had itself to form a part of it and enclose it and be within it, was, to all intents and purposes, complete. It was the spring of 1939, a joyous spring. The Concierto de Aranjuez, written in the spring near the Luxembourg Gardens in flower, with the students happily singing, found its final form in Madrid months later. Only one thing remained to be known, which often kept me awake at night. Could it be played? And would the guitar be heard? The conclusive answer would be given by the hands of Regino. They created the miracle. I, and many others, are very grateful to him. Almost everything that can be written about this concerto has been said, but the one thing that hasn't been written or said is precisely the thing that the public hopes for, which is for its composer to explain what the music represents, what it means, or what he was thinking of when he created it. But I find myself obliged to say, unfortunately, that the only thing I was thinking was that the said concerto should turn out as well as possible, that it should give pleasure, and that it should be played a great deal. What does it represent, or rather mean? It means whatever any one of us imagines, within the limits suggested by the composer, which he's tried to convey to his audience, that's to say, a suggestion of times past, of the beautiful gardens of Aranjuez, its fountains, its trees, its birds. What does this work have that makes the most diverse audiences, differing in type and size, differing also in their preferences, customs, even nationality, enjoy it with the same delight, the same emotions, the same enthusiasm? Sincerely, I do not know. If I did know, I would have found the ultimate, the panacea, in a word, the philosopher's stone for my music and for my success. The Concierto de Aranjuez evokes a vast array of colourful imagery and feelings. Being a history lover, especially of Spanish history, when I created this concerto, I had in mind the courts of Charles IV, a Bourbon king of 18th century Spain, whose summer holiday residence was the palace of Aranjuez. Everything about it is awe-inspiring. Its lordly palace, its gardens and fountains, its majestic views. Bearing this in mind, while listening to the Concierto de Aranjuez, one can clearly visualize the fair ladies, noblemen, toreadors, and commoners of the kingdom. Each listener is free to seek his or her own interpretation. Often we're told how the power of this work eases one's soul into profound introspection, releasing so many different feelings and images. It is probably this mysterious power that carries everyone who listens to it in every direction imaginable. If one really stops to think, this concerto awakens every known feeling and mood. Love, joy, war, distress, sadness, poverty, richness, nobility. Everything one can think of. If nostalgia could take form, the second movement would be its perfect mould.